Last summer, I decided to go camping in the mountains. I had always loved nature, and the idea of spending a few days in the wilderness was exciting. I packed my backpack with all the essentials: a tent, sleeping bag, food, water, and a camera. I was ready for an adventure. The first day was perfect. The weather was warm, and the sky was clear. I hiked through the forest, admiring the tall trees and listening to the birds singing. By the afternoon, I found a nice spot by a stream to set up my camp. The sound of the water flowing was soothing, and I felt at peace. As evening approached, I built a small fire and cooked dinner. After eating, I sat by the fire, watching the flames dance and flicker. The forest around me started to get dark, and the sounds of the night creatures began to emerge. I felt a bit uneasy, but reminded myself that I was in a safe place. The next day, I decided to explore a bit further. I followed the stream, hoping to find a waterfall or a hidden lake. The path was rugged, and I had to climb over rocks and fallen trees. After a few hours, I came across a small clearing. The view was breathtaking. I could see the mountains in the distance and the vast forest stretching out below. As I stood there, I noticed something strange. There were large footprints in the dirt. They were much bigger than any human footprint I had ever seen. My curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to follow them. The footprints led deeper into the forest, away from the stream and the trail. I walked for what felt like an hour, carefully stepping over roots and ducking under branches. The forest was dense, and the light struggled to penetrate the thick canopy above. I started to feel a bit nervous, realizing I was far from my camp and the safety of the trail. Suddenly, I heard a rustling sound nearby. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound grew louder, and I could see movement through the trees. I held my breath, trying to stay as quiet as possible. Then I saw it. A large, hairy creature stepped into view. It was unusually tall, covered in dark brown fur. Its arms were long and muscular, and its face was somewhat human-like, but with a wild, animalistic look. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was looking at a Sasquatch. The creature didn't seem to notice me at first. It moved slowly, almost gracefully, as it walked through the forest. I watched in awe, trying to take in every detail. Its fur was matted in places, and it had a few scars on its body. It looked strong and powerful, yet there was a certain gentleness in the way it moved. I took a few steps back, trying to get a better view without making any noise. Unfortunately, I stepped on a dry twig and it snapped loudly under my foot. The Sasquatch stopped and turned its head in my direction. Our eyes met, and I felt a chill run down my spine. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I could see curiosity in its eyes, but also a hint of caution. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to scare it away, but I also didn't want to provoke it. I slowly raised my camera, hoping to capture this incredible moment. The Sasquatch watched me closely as I took a few pictures. Then it made a low, rumbling sound and turned to walk away. I felt a mix of relief and disappointment as I watched it disappear into the forest. I wanted to follow it, but I knew it was best to stay where I was. I stood there for a few more minutes, trying to process what had just happened. I had always heard stories about Sasquatch, but I never believed they were real. Now I had seen one with my own eyes. I felt a sense of wonder and amazement, but also a bit of fear. I made my way back to my camp, my mind racing with thoughts and questions. What was the Sasquatch doing here? How many of them were there? Would I see it again? As I walked, I kept looking around, half expecting to see it watching me from the shadows. When I finally reached my camp, it was getting dark. I quickly started a fire and sat down, still feeling a bit shaken. I looked through the pictures I had taken, making sure they were clear. The images were incredible. I couldn't wait to show them to my friends and family. That night, I had trouble sleeping. Every little sound made me jump, and I kept thinking about the Sasquatch. I wondered if it was still nearby, watching me. I felt a strange connection to it, almost like it was a guardian of the forest. The next morning, I packed up my camp and started my journey back home. As I walked, I kept an eye out for any signs of the Sasquatch, but I didn't see anything. The forest seemed quieter than usual, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. When I finally got home, I couldn't wait to tell everyone about my encounter. Some people were skeptical, but most were amazed by the pictures. I felt proud to have seen something so rare and mysterious. Now, whenever I go hiking or camping, I always keep my eyes and ears open. The forest feels different to me now, knowing that such creatures might be out there. I have a newfound respect for nature and all its secrets. My encounter with the Sasquatch was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I will never forget it. It's hard for me to tell this story. As a Navy man, I think I'm supposed to be strong and unshakable. When you think of the military, you picture strength, right? That's what the commercials want you to imagine. The United States military is unshakable, and you could be too. But something did shake me. It's haunted me my entire life. I was stationed in Cadiz. It was beautiful and peaceful. Most people transfer in and out of that base without any unusual experiences. I wasn't that lucky. After what I saw, I couldn't go back to normal. It ruined my career. It was late one night, and I was on the beachfront, overlooking a shallow cliff. The beach was a favorite spot for many of us. I thought it would be a calm night. Then the screaming started. At first, it sounded like yelling. I heard a commotion coming from the busier part of town. I saw flashlights and silhouettes. A group of people was searching for someone. I wanted to help. I started toward them, separated by a few narrow alleyways, but something stopped me. There was another scream, high-pitched and pained, from the direction of the cliff. No one else seemed to hear it. The noise and buildings blocked the sound. I could help the group, but who would investigate the scream? I ran to the cliff. As the evening grew darker, I barely saw a shape on the ledge. It was a person. Someone was standing on the edge. I could see their shoulders and legs. I called out to them. Then I saw something move behind the person. It had been perfectly in line with their body. The thing wrapped its arms around the person, like snakes in the dim light. The person's face twisted in horror. They wanted to scream again, but no sound came out. The creature's arms were tight around their chest, trapping the air in their lungs. Then its head appeared. It didn't look quite human. It was long and reminded me of an eel. It was ugly and full of hate. A voice called out from behind me. The flashlights in town were now pointed my way. The creature was startled and dove over the cliff, taking the person with it. They both disappeared. I stood in shock as the crowd ran past me. They were yelling, asking why I didn't stop the person from jumping. It was a short fall, I thought. They would have been fine if they had jumped. But no one else had seen the truth. No one but me knew the person hadn't simply fallen over the edge. They'd been pulled, taken. Eventually, I found myself at the edge of the cliff with the search party. I don't remember walking there. I just remember looking down. There was no one there. No person, no body, no monster. A few people climbed down to search more closely. We'd all seen the person go over the edge. The sea wasn't rough enough to have washed them away. I heard a few of them yell, "Eels! Eels in the water!" I knew regular eels weren't dangerous, but the locals knew something I didn't. They quickly ran out of the water. I followed them for a while. They reported back to the police, who never joined the search. I thought I might need to confirm the story. I thought I could explain the person's final moments, although I wasn't sure I'd mention the monster. I never got the chance to decide. The police didn't want to talk to me or the search party. They didn't want to help at all. I thought there'd be an uproar. I thought the locals would be furious, but I watched the hope disappear from their eyes. They all gave up when the police turned them away. It was like they knew something I didn't, like they already understood the mystery I was trying to solve. I tried to get them to talk, to tell me what had happened, but they kept me in the dark. I wondered if it was a local secret. I wondered if the person had done something wrong and the town thought giving them to the sea was acceptable. I never learned why they went to the cliff or why the town was searching for them. When I told my peers, they just laughed. "Cadiz has secrets," they said. That didn't satisfy me. That didn't stop my skin from crawling. Eventually, when I couldn't move on without answers, the Navy cast me aside. They let me fall off my own cliff. Now I wait, hoping that one day someone will explain what I saw. When I was younger, my family would spend our summers by the ocean. We had a small beach house on the coast, and I loved everything about it. The sound of the waves, the smell of the salt in the air, and the way the sand felt between my toes were magical. Every day was an adventure, but nothing could have prepared me for the incredible sight I encountered one summer afternoon. It was a particularly hot day, and my friends and I decided to go for a swim. The water was cool and refreshing, and we spent hours playing games and diving beneath the waves. As the sun began to set, most of my friends headed back to shore, but I decided to stay in the water a little longer. I loved the peacefulness of the ocean at that time of day. I swam out farther than usual, enjoying the quiet and the feeling of the water around me. I was floating on my back, staring up at the sky when I felt a strange sensation. It was as if the water beneath me had shifted. I looked around but didn't see anything unusual. The ocean was calm and the sun was casting a golden glow on the surface. Just as I was about to turn back toward the shore, I saw it. At first, it was just a shadow, a massive shape moving gracefully through the water. My heart skipped a beat, and I felt a rush of excitement and fear. I had always been fascinated by marine life, and I knew instantly that this was something extraordinary. As the creature came closer, I realized just how enormous it was. It was a shark, but not like any shark I had ever seen. This shark was easily the size of a school bus, with a body that seemed to go on forever. Its massive tail fin moved slowly and powerfully, propelling it through the water with ease. I was awestruck. I remembered reading about megalodons, giant prehistoric sharks that had lived millions of years ago. Scientists believed they had gone extinct, but here, right in front of me, was a living megalodon. It was hard to believe, but there was no other explanation. The creature was too large to be anything else. For a moment, I was frozen in place, not sure what to do. The megalodon didn't seem to notice me. It was gliding through the water, its massive mouth slightly open, revealing rows of sharp teeth. I could see the gills on the side of its head moving as it breathed. Despite its size and fearsome appearance, there was a certain grace to its movements. I slowly began to swim backward, trying not to draw attention to myself. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I couldn't take my eyes off the creature. It was a sight I would never forget. As I moved, the megalodon continued on its path, seemingly uninterested in my presence. I watched in awe as it disappeared into the depths of the ocean, its silhouette growing fainter until it was gone. I swam back to shore as fast as I could, my mind racing. When I reached the beach, I found my friends and family gathered around a bonfire. I tried to explain what I had seen, but they laughed it off, thinking it was just a tall tale. I couldn't blame them. It did sound unbelievable. But I knew what I had seen. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about the Megalodon. I wondered how it had survived for so long without being discovered. I thought about the vastness of the ocean and all the mysteries it held. It was humbling to realize how little we knew about the world beneath the waves. Over the years, I kept my story to myself. I would occasionally share it with close friends, but most people dismissed it as a fanciful imagination. However, every time I visited the ocean, I couldn't help but scan the water, hoping to catch another glimpse of the magnificent creature. As I grew older, my fascination with marine life only deepened. I studied marine biology in college and eventually became a marine biologist. My encounter with the Megalodon had sparked a lifelong passion for understanding the ocean and its inhabitants. I traveled to different parts of the world, studying sharks and other marine creatures, always with a sense of wonder and curiosity. One summer, many years after my initial sighting, I returned to the same beach where I had first seen the Megalodon. It was a nostalgic trip, and I brought my own children with me, eager to share the magic of the ocean with them. We spent our days exploring the tide pools, collecting shells, and swimming in the waves. One evening, as the sun was setting, I took my children for a swim. The water was calm, and the sky was painted with hues of pink and orange. As we floated on our backs, I couldn't help but think about the Megalodon and how it had changed my life. Suddenly, my youngest son pointed excitedly at the water. "Look, Dad, what's that?" he exclaimed. I followed his gaze and felt my heart skip a beat. There, in the distance, was the unmistakable silhouette of a massive shark. It was moving slowly, its enormous body cutting through the water with ease. My children stared in awe, their eyes wide with wonder. I smiled, feeling a sense of déjà vu. I knew what they were feeling. I wrapped my arms around them, holding them close as we watched the Megalodon glide gracefully through the ocean. This time, I wasn't afraid. I was grateful for the moment, for the chance to share this incredible sight with my children. As the Megalodon disappeared into the depths once more, I knew that the ocean still held many secrets. And while some might doubt my story, I knew the truth. The Megalodon was real, and it was a reminder of the endless mysteries that awaited us in the deep blue sea. I was out on my evening run, as usual, trying to keep up with my daily mile goal. I've always enjoyed running, especially in the early evening when the sun is just beginning to set. Tonight, though, was different. The park I ran in was usually safe, a place where I felt comfortable even after dark. But tonight, something felt off. The park was about 10 miles from my house and had a bunch of trails, some in the woods and others along a river. I usually ran the flat purple trail along the river because it was easier and fit my mile goal perfectly. As I started my run, the sky was still bright enough to see, but the sun was dipping lower by the minute. The first thing I noticed was the air. It had a strange smell, something I couldn't quite place. It was musty and a bit like rotten fruit. I thought it might be from a dead fish in the river, a common smell in the park. I held my breath and kept running, hoping the smell would fade away. As I ran, the light started to fade quickly. I knew I'd be running back in the dark, but I didn't think much of it. I usually put my headphones in to listen to music, but tonight I had taken them out to be more aware of my surroundings. The park was usually quiet, but tonight there was an odd silence, a sort of stillness that made me uneasy. I made it to the end of the purple trail, where there's a small loop. It's a nice, easy place to turn around. I took a short break, catching my breath and stretching a bit. The sky was now dark, and I turned on my headlamp for the run back. The beam of light cut through the darkness, but it didn't reach far into the woods on either side of the trail. As I began my run back, I could still smell that awful odor, stronger now. It was like wet garbage mixed with something else, something almost metallic. I wrinkled my nose but pushed on. The park was familiar, and I trusted it. Then I saw something that made my heart race. About 30 feet ahead, up in the trees, there were two glowing eyes staring back at me. They weren't very high up, but they were definitely not at the level of a regular animal like a raccoon or deer. They seemed too big and too high. I stopped in my tracks, my breath catching in my throat. My first thought was that it was a bear. I had read that if you see a bear, you should make yourself look big and make loud noises. I started waving my arms and shouting, trying to look as large as possible. My headlamp shone directly on the eyes, and I tried to make out what I was looking at. The eyes belonged to something covered in fur, but it wasn't a bear. The creature was gray and had a kind of long snout that reminded me of a wolf. Wolves don't usually climb trees, though, and this thing's fur had an odd, dirty quality to it. It didn't move like a normal animal, and it seemed almost to blend into the shadows. I was terrified. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself to turn and run. I sprinted back towards the parking lot, not daring to look behind me. My mind raced with the image of those glowing eyes, and I could still smell that terrible stench. When I reached the parking lot, I fumbled to unlock my car door. I finally got inside and locked it behind me, breathing heavily. I took a moment to calm down, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. I could still smell that awful odor in the car, which only added to my fear. I started the engine and was about to drive away when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. My headlights illuminated the trail behind me, and I saw the same glowing eyes again, reflecting in the beams. It was as if the creature was watching me leave. I didn't want to stay and find out more. I quickly put the car in drive and sped out of the parking lot, not looking back. My heart was pounding, and I could hardly believe what had just happened. As I drove home, I tried to calm down, but the image of those eyes and the smell of the creature stayed with me. The next day, I talked to some friends about what happened, but they were skeptical. They thought it might have been a trick of the light or an animal I had never seen before. I wanted to believe them, but I knew what I had seen. I still went to the park occasionally during the day, but I never ran the purple trail again after dark. Sometimes, when I drive past the park, I think about that night. I still don't know what I saw, but the memory of those glowing eyes and that awful smell stays with me. In the sleepy suburb of Oak Ridge, where the biggest excitement usually came from a lawnmower parade or a bake sale, something extraordinary was about to unfold. It started on a crisp, clear evening. The sky was painted in shades of purple and gold, and the neighborhood was quiet, save for the distant hum of cicadas. Gracie, an 11-year-old with a penchant for adventure, was out in her backyard with her telescope, scanning the heavens for shooting stars. As she peered through her telescope, something unusual caught her eye. It wasn't a star or a planet, but a small, glowing object descending slowly toward the nearby park. Her heart raced with a mixture of curiosity and excitement. She ran to fetch her older brother Zach, who was lounging on the porch. "Zach, come quick! I think I see something weird in the park," she shouted. Zach, not wanting to miss out on whatever his sister was so worked up about, followed her. They grabbed their flashlights and headed toward the park, the soft grass crunching under their feet. When they reached the park, they saw it. A small, silver spacecraft, no bigger than a large car, resting gently on the grass. The craft had a sleek, aerodynamic shape and glowed softly under the moonlight. Gracie and Zach exchanged wide-eyed glances. From the spacecraft, a hatch opened and a figure emerged. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. Standing about 3 feet tall, the alien had shimmering, translucent skin and eyes that looked like liquid pools of light. It appeared calm and curious, taking in its surroundings with a sense of wonder. Gracie, though nervous, felt a surge of bravery. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling slightly. "We're not going to hurt you." The alien seemed to understand, as it made a gentle, humming sound that felt strangely comforting. It extended a hand toward Gracie and Zach, and from its palm, a small holographic image projected into the air. It showed a map of the stars and constellations, along with what looked like a message of thanks. Gracie and Zach watched in awe as the alien made a series of gestures that seemed to be a form of communication. The holographic map then changed to display their own neighborhood, with a glowing path indicating the direction back to the spacecraft. After a few more moments, the alien re-entered the spacecraft. The hatch closed, and the craft lifted off silently, leaving behind only a faint shimmer in the night sky. Gracie and Zach stood there, speechless, as the spacecraft vanished among the stars. The next morning, the neighborhood buzzed with the usual chatter about the weather and the upcoming garage sale. Gracie and Zach decided it was best to keep their extraordinary encounter to themselves. They knew that no one would believe them, and besides, they cherished the secret they now shared, a secret that made the ordinary world of Oak Ridge just a bit more magical.